Hello again and welcome to Money Tips. This is Charles Kelly, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Right, I want to talk to you today. It's Sunday here in London. It's a sunny Sunday day, 1st of September, and the year seems to be flying by. So I wanted to sort of round up on what's going on this week in the news, and also to talk more about Hong Kong and China and how this is affecting the world. Hi to everyone on Facebook Live. Hi Sam and other people coming on. And hello to my Money Tips podcast listeners, which you can find on moneytipsdaily.com and on iTunes. So what's been happening this week? Well, the main thing, the market settled after the China trade war with Trump seems to have settled down. Now, today is the 1st of September, and actually his new levies and his new tariffs have taken effect from the 1st of September. So I wonder whether we'll see another retaliation from China. And then we talked about, so the markets have come back from the previous drop and things seem to be okay, but I don't think the markets are okay. I think there's further falls to come for whatever reason. The markets are not as logical and rational as everyone thinks. Now, I also talked about Jack Ma. He is the past chief executive of Alibaba, one of the largest internet companies in the world, and he was recommending that a 12-hour working day, 6 days a week, is a great thing, is a blessing. And he said, people should work from 9 till 9, 6 days a week, and he calls it its 996 formula. And I wrote about that in an episode, and I commented on that. I think, many business people and many business owners probably do work 12 hours a day, but not everyone wants to work 12 hours a day. If you add in the commuting time and all the rest of it, it's probably more like a 14 to 15 hour day. So where do you get time to do anything else? Now, it's strange that Jack Ma stood down as chief executive of his company that he built up, and he built up with other people's money and investment, but it does seem like the Chinese government is somewhere in the background pulling strings, because he stepped down, and people are theorizing that maybe China wants to just take over his company and telling him to like we want that company, we want that money, and saying that China may be effectively bust because the economy there is run largely on loans, and the property market's overheating, and we're wondering if China really has the money to continue going as it is, or whether it's all just one big myth and a big bubble that's about to explode. And I read that, and I saw some videos, and I looked at it and I thought, well, is it really true? And then you look at the Hong Kong riots which are going on, and you think, well, people have been rioting for quite a long time now. And when we first saw the rioters, they tended to be professional people. Some were lawyers, and they were standing in the street. They seemed like intelligent, articulate, reasonable people saying, "Look, we want our rights to continue in Hong Kong," and they were mounting peaceful demonstrations. But now you look at the demonstrations, and they seem to be getting more and more violent. And these people with masks on, throwing petrol bombs at the police, and closing down airports. Today they're closing down the subways that lead to the airports. They're throwing things on the track and sabotaging trains. Now this seems like a new type of protester. It's not the first group of protesters we saw, young professional people. These are like agitators. They're renter mob, and I'm wondering who is renting this mob. Is it the Chinese government? Because the Chinese government have piled up troops on the border ready to move in, but of course the world would condemn them. But if they're effectively stoking up these riots and maybe causing the very thing that started the riots, this new law that they wanted to bring in to extradite people to China if they're suspected of a crime, maybe they've stoked this up in the first place and are just looking for an excuse to go in and take over Hong Kong and take the money that Hong Kong has, because the Hong Kong dollar is not pegged to the Chinese currency, it's pegged to the dollar. And I just wonder, maybe that's a conspiracy theory gone too far. I don't know, but I tend to look at conspiracy theories and think, well, maybe, you don't know. Is China waiting to just move in on Hong Kong and just take over? And therefore, they're getting the rent-a-mob crowd to stoke up the demonstrations so that then they say, well, look, we've got no choice. We have to do something. We can't just let the country fall into anarchy. And then they move in and take over. And Hong Kong is then, where is it? It's just another Chinese province. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, because Hong Kong's been a super successful place, and I hope this doesn't happen. But I think China's economy is on the wane, as is India's economy is faltering at the moment, and that's why I think we're probably due for a recession soon, but we don't know when. Obviously, if I knew that, I'd place a bet on it today. So we'll have to see what happens, and that prompted people, which I also talked about this week, prompted people to look for these golden visas from Hong Kong. These are citizens in Hong Kong that have money, maybe have more than $1 million, $2 million, and can just, move out quickly. And you can get what's called a golden visa. Now, you can just move to Australia and Canada, depending on your occupation, depending on whether the countries need that form of occupation at that time. Like if they need teachers, get all the teachers in. They need nurses. Let's get all the nurses in. Let's get engineers in this year. But not everyone can comply with that, and it takes a long time. Whereas the golden visa is a way of just saying, right, slap some money on the table. Here's my money. I'll invest into a property or a company, and you'll give me a residency permit almost immediately. And Cyprus is one of those countries that, if you invest in property in Cyprus, you'll get a residency permit within 2 months, and certain kinds of investments will give you a Cyprus passport almost immediately, and that's for your family, your children, your wife, your children, the dependents up to age 25, and even your parents. So you could literally move out the whole family from Hong Kong or China or wherever, and just get one of these golden visas. And of course, Cyprus is in the European Union, so once you've got that Cyprus passport, you can live and work anywhere within the European Union. And certainly once you've got residency, it's very easy to travel within the Schengen area. And Cyprus is an attractive place, and you can buy, investment properties that will, give you a rental yield as well. And so that's just one of the examples of the golden visas. And one of the Hong Kong immigration lawyers was on TV, on the BBC, talking about the rise in the interest in emigration from Hong Kong and the rise in the interest in golden visas. Certainly would be tragic for Hong Kong to lose all of these smart, wealthy business people, but that's the way things go. If China will continue with this action, then I think a lot of people will leave. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with me. I can give you more information. Obviously, in the UK, Brexit is still going on. Boris Johnson said he would prorogue or suspend Parliament this week, and there's been some riots on the street, not riots, but demonstrations on the streets in London. However, a poll suggests that a lot of people support what Boris Johnson is doing, and that his ratings have actually gone up. So there you go. The pound has gone down a little bit, so the pound is quite low. So if people are going on holiday from the UK abroad, they're going to find it quite expensive, but it is cheap to come to London. So come to the UK, come and visit the UK. It's cheap, the pound is low. There's lots of free things to do in London. All the museums are free, the great parks are there, and lots of things to do in London. So come and visit London. The weather's still nice in September and even October. It's a great time to come and visit. So there you go with the Brexit. I won't go into the political side of things. But I wanted to talk also about just someone's that made Sam Fongo's made a point here that China has taken over assets in Sri Lanka and many African countries for default interest and huge payments. And this is true. China is colonizing the world. This is something I've mentioned in other previous podcasts. So thanks for that, Sam. China is really colonizing the world. They're building this Silk Road from China to Italy, and you think, where is all this money coming from? Where they seem to have billions and billions, and the party top brass seem to be billionaires when they should be just civil servants, but it doesn't seem to work like that. And they're colonizing the world. They've taken over islands in the South China Sea, which I mentioned the other day. They've taken over islands in the Philippines, just marched in and taken it over. and ignored a court ruling from the International Court in The Hague. And they're taking over islands in around Vietnam as well. And they're building these islands along the South China Sea lanes, the shipping lanes, which carry much of the world's cargo and trade, and just saying, well, this is our land, this is our sea, when normally you would have a 13-mile limit, and then the rest of it is from your coastline 13 miles, and then after that the rest is international waters. China thinks that the whole of the South China Sea is their waters, and they're acting like they own it. And even the Americans have to tread carefully when they're sailing through these waters, as was said by a former naval officer and former chief strategy staff member Steve Bannon, who was the former chief strategy officer for Donald Trump. And he said that the American ships have to tread carefully when they go through. They have to keep their guns down, their radar down, and that that they've had incidents of been rammed and almost rammed by Chinese boats, and almost like intimidating them to get out of that area. And certainly China is taking over that area. And a lot of this stems back to the former Philippine president Aquino, who got rid of the bases in the Philippines many years ago. When Marcos fell, she said, we're going to get rid of all these naval bases in Subic Bay, which was a huge naval base the size of a small city, and she got rid of the Clark Air Base. So now that area, there's a vacuum there, and China has moved in and taken over that vacuum. And it's sad that the Philippines seems to be moving away from the American influence and moving more towards China, because there are apparently 300,000 Chinese workers in the Philippines, in a country where workers have to go abroad to find jobs. There are 300,000 Chinese workers in the Philippines right now, and just like in Africa, they're taking over assets. And yeah, China says, great, we'll build a railway for you, but then they will own all the land around that railway forever. They will give loans to the government in Africa or Sri Lanka or wherever, and those loans are very hard to pay back, so they effectively control the country. They're looking for controlling countries where there are commodities in Africa, gold and minerals and everything else that they need to run their economy. So it's like colonizing the world, and the only one who's standing up to them, I know you might not like him, but the only one who's standing up to China is Donald Trump, and saying, no, this is not the way it has to be done. I want to level the playing field, and that's why he's introduced those tariffs. So I can only say, whatever you think of the guy, I have to admire him for that, for standing up to China. Okay, so that's the roundup of the week. I also talked about the power of compound interest the other day. So look at that episode, the power of compound interest, and how you can use compound interest to make a fortune. And yesterday we also talked about the fire movement, not the fire starters, the fire movement, the extreme penny pinching movement, where they believe they can save 70% of their income in order to retire early, but they live extremely cheaply. So I'm not recommending the FIRE movement, but it is one way of saving for retirement. But it does illustrate the point that most people don't even think about saving for retirement. Okay, so the word of the day today, I want to talk about the markets. You often hear on the financial news, they talk about the markets of this or the markets that, the markets up, the markets down. What are the markets? Well, the markets are, it's a generic term for the many forms of financial. I'm talking about the financial markets, not the market where you go and buy your fruit and veg. The financial sector, financial markets is often used to refer to various forms of markets, and these can be, I'll give you some examples, the capital markets, right? So capital markets consist of the stock markets, shares, and the bond markets, okay, where the governments and companies sell bonds, which are like someone will lend me money and I'll give you a bond which gives you interest over the next how many years. Commodity markets, which facilitate the trading of commodities, gold, silver, all sorts of different commodities that are traded on these markets. Money markets, which provide short-term debt finance and investments. Derivative markets, which provide instruments for the management of financial risk. Don't ask me to explain derivatives, I'll be here all day. futures markets, which provide standardized forward contracts for trading products at some future date, and you also have a forward market. These facilitate businesses who might want to secure a position in a future price for a product that they will need in the future. You also have foreign exchange markets, forex markets, which is trading of money. And then a newer one now is cryptocurrency, which is Bitcoin and things like this, where it's come onto the markets now. And the Bitcoin, as you know, is going up and down all the time, but they have a market for that. Spot markets, interbank lending markets. So there are all sorts of markets. So when you think about markets, think about these, just think of it as a generic term, and then look at the individual market that you might want to look at. Like if you're a share investor, learn about it, learn how to invest in shares, and then you're not relying on fund managers who frankly don't perform very well and charge a lot of money for it. So that's the weekly roundup. So I hope you have a great Sunday wherever you are in the world, and thanks for listening, thanks for tuning in. This is Charles Kelly, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Thank you very much.